Before we dive in today, I just need to tell you guys something very important. We have had snow with frozen ice on the ground for 18 days now. 18 days. That is not normal where I live. And because of that, I haven't had mail delivered for over 2 weeks because our mail woman refuses to deliver the mail if she has to physically get out of her truck and there is snow and ice. It's not even snow. It's not something you could shovel piled up in front of all the mailboxes on our cul-de-sac. I literally had to run out yesterday and chase her truck to get the mail that she has held for us for well over 2 weeks. But I think today might be the day, you guys. It's going to be 60 degrees. It was warm yesterday, or at least it'll be close to 60. And I will joyfully shovel some of that ice snow that has been sitting in front of my mailbox as soon as it's warm enough for me to do so. In fact, I will also try to get my neighbors to help me, who are also motivated to get mail. And the mail woman told me if we could just clear my mailbox, she would deliver our whole cul-de-sac's mail into my box. So that's what's going on in my neck of the woods. All right, on to today's episode. If your baby or toddler's sleep has been inconsistent and you've been wondering whether their morning wake time might be playing a role, meaning what time they're actually waking up in the morning to start their day, then this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of 2. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. Hey there, Allison here. Welcome back to How Long Till Bedtime. Today we're talking about something that doesn't always get a lot of airtime, but can actually play a really important role in how the entire day and night will unfold. And that is your baby or toddler's morning wake time. More specifically, I want to answer the question, should your baby or toddler be waking up at the same time every single morning? The short answer is yes, consistency matters, but we have to remember that children aren't robots. And like most things related to baby and toddler sleep, there's a lot of nuance. So let's get into it. Let's talk about why morning wake time does matter. When your baby or toddler wakes up for the day, they are setting the rhythm for everything that follows. That morning wake time influences their feeding schedule, the timing of their naps, whether naps are restorative or short, and ultimately, all of those things can play into how smooth and consistent bedtime and overall night sleep feels. When the day starts at roughly the same time each morning, it becomes much easier to build a nap schedule that works with your child's natural sleep rhythms rather than having to work against them. And when you work with those rhythms, sleep is simply easier for your child and it's going to be more consistent. On the flip side, when morning wake time varies significantly, let's say one day your child wakes up at 6:15 in the morning and then the next day it's 7:45. Well, then the entire days tend to feel inconsistent. This is especially true if you've been relying on wake windows to guide your naps. If the morning wake time shifts and you're starting that wake window clock at a different time each day, nap times are going to also be shifting. And that means that bedtime will typically either end up being too early, or it could be too late. Or suddenly you're needing to try to squeeze in an extra nap, and then the whole thing just feels like a total guessing game. A quick side note here on wake windows. I've talked a lot about wake windows on the podcast and on social media, but I want to briefly touch on them here because I think it really matters when we're talking about children who are not having a consistent morning wake time. They aren't waking at the same time each day. Wake windows are not evidence-based. And if your baby is 5 months or older and you're dealing with inconsistent wake times, relying heavily on wake windows may actually be working against you. I go much deeper into this wake windows versus set nap start times in episode 205. So I don't want to rehash everything I said in that episode, but if this is something that you've been wrestling with, I highly recommend that you finish listening to this episode and then head back and listen to episode 205. Now, let's talk about what I mean by consistent wake times, because again, our children are not robots. They will likely not wake at the exact same time each day. And your child does not need to wake up at the exact same minute every single morning for their sleep to be consistent and healthy. The goal is not precision. The goal is predictability. For most babies who are 4 months and older, and for toddlers, waking within about 15 to 30 minutes of the same time each morning is ideal. So having about a 30-minute wake window, if you will. That level of consistency supports stable naps that have anchor start times, a consistent total amount of daytime sleep, because when we have stable start times, the length of the naps will likely become more consistent, and a bedtime that aligns with your child's circadian rhythm consistently. And all of that sets the stage for more consistent, higher quality sleep overall, both throughout the day and throughout the night. Now, what is a quote normal morning wake time or window? Most babies 4 months and older, and most of those toddlers, naturally fall into a morning wake time that's somewhere between 6 and 7 a.m. That's when the circadian rhythm is biologically primed for their day to start. Now, if your child is sleeping past 7 a.m., after they've gotten 11 to 12 hours of solid night sleep, first of all, congratulations. Second of all, the rest of us are a little bit jealous that you have a sleep unicorn with a later rhythm. To you lucky ducks, I say there's no prize for waking a good sleeper just to hit a number on the clock. So you fall firmly into the category, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Go on with your bad self. But if you're listening to this episode, you probably don't have one of these sleep unicorns. And sometimes a later wake time is a piece of the sleep puzzle that's out of place. Because if your child is sometimes waking early and then sometimes waking late, we're back into the inconsistent piece. And most often, children are in that situation of sleeping later when they sometimes also wake up very early because they're up frequently overnight. And then they're sleeping a little bit later to make up for some of the missed nighttime sleep. So when we accommodate that, thinking that they are tired and we should just let them get some sleep, you can actually be fueling that fragmented night sleep, and that can make sleep harder to stabilize. In those cases where you may have a baby or a toddler who's up for extended periods of time during the night, they seem to be having a true wakeful period and then they want to sleep in later, I would suggest setting a consistent morning wake time cutoff, usually 7 a.m. And I know that may sound a little bit counterintuitive to cut them off when you know they need sleep. I mean, why would you wake a baby or toddler who already is clearly tired and struggling with their sleep? And just as a reminder, it's because having a consistent morning start time or that consistent morning 30-minute wake up window is going to help regulate their daytime sleep, which is going to support better naps and then create a bedtime that aligns with their optimal circadian rhythm and sets them up for longer, more consolidated stretches of sleep at night. Babies and toddlers, just like adults, thrive on rhythm. And the start of the day is one of the most powerful places to actually begin to create rhythm. Now, what should you do if you have one of these children who wakes crazy early? If you're listening to this because your child wakes very early, earlier than 6 a.m., you might be thinking, I would love to have to wake my baby up at 7 a.m. Listen, I see you. My oldest was a dedicated 4:35 a.m. riser until we finally figured out her sleep puzzle just before she turned 2. If your child is regularly waking before 6 a.m., you're dealing with a little bit trickier situation. And it's often not something that can be solved with one simple tweak because there are a lot of things that can play into that. Early morning wakings are very child specific, which makes them hard to really cover in a general podcast episode. But I do want to share 2 adjustments that often help and might be able to provide you with some quick relief or signs that you're moving in the right direction. Adjustment 1, an earlier bedtime. I know it feels counterintuitive or backwards, but more often than not, an earlier bedtime leads to your child going to sleep being less overtired. It leads to deeper, higher quality sleep, and it leads to longer sleep into those morning hours because they fell into this higher quality sleep that helped them connect sleep cycles all the way till morning. When babies or toddlers stay up too late, sleep is more likely to become fragmented. And that fragmentation often shows up as an early morning waking. And when they wake in the early morning, their sleep pressure has decreased significantly, and it's harder for them to get back to sleep. An earlier bedtime helps align sleep with their natural circadian rhythm, which makes it easier for them to connect those sleep cycles and sleep a little bit later. Adjustment 2, delay the first feed until after 6 a.m. Just like with sleep, children also have eating rhythms. If your baby or toddler consistently wakes up crazy early and gets their first milk feeding or breakfast at, say, 5:30 a.m., their body learns to expect food at that time. And that may mean that it starts to wake them even earlier because hunger cues arrive. When possible, holding that first feed off until after 6 a.m. can help shift that rhythm later. This doesn't mean that you have to ignore a genuinely hungry newborn. That's not what I'm talking about here. But for older babies and toddlers who don't technically need that feeding at 4:35, 5:30 in the morning, this adjustment of holding off and not feeding them before 6 a.m. can sometimes make a very meaningful difference as it relates to resetting their rhythm. So let's recap. Should your baby or toddler have a set morning wake time? Yes, we want a set window. Consistency matters because it sets the rhythm for the entire day. But remember, your child does not need to wake at the exact same minute every single morning. Aim for that predictable 30-minute window, and for most babies or toddlers, that window is going to fall somewhere between 6 and 7 a.m. And if your child's sleep feels off, morning wake time is often a powerful and overlooked place to start to regulate their sleep schedule. If you've listened all the way through this episode, there's a good chance your child's morning wake time hasn't been consistent, and you've been wondering if making it consistent would help improve their overall sleep. If that's the case, I hope this episode gave you clarity on how to move forward. As always, there's no one-size-fits-all approach for sleep. If you're feeling stuck, you're always welcome to reach out to us for help. You can learn more about how you can work with me or the sleep coaches on my team at sleepandwellnesscoach.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you'll come back again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.